Well, yeah, back in the early 50s, I think it was 1950. This guy here, Gerard Peltier, he's a writer for Le Devoir newspaper, and he's well known, well respected man, and he's passed away today. But he started writing about the orphans back in the 1950, 51, 52, 53, and he was trying to wake up the people to this, to the orphan story, the horrors and everything. So he wrote for 3 years, but it really didn't budge anything. And also there's this other woman from Toronto, another reporter. She wrote also. And it... because maybe she was English writer, it started a scandal, and the Quebec almost told the English newspaper to mind their own business and this and that. So anyway, in 1991, 92, the orphans started to come out of the let's say out of the closet, if you want, and demanding their medical files and wanting justice for what happened. So, my wife, we were watching this on TV, watching this on the news, and all the orphans, and my wife, Clarina Duguay, she announced for the first time in something like a little over 25 years that we were together, married, and I didn't even know. And she just said, she says, I am one of those orphans that we're watching right now. So,
oh, wow. So she was still so traumatized she had not told you in 25 years.
Well, what she said to us, that she didn't want to traumatize the kids.
Okay.
Our 6 children. And, you know what I mean? And she just didn't want no one to, and in knowing my wife also and the other orphans now, they all blamed themselves, most of them. They were blaming themselves for what happened to in their past,
Okay, now back at the beginning, this actually, under the reign of Maurice Duplessis, Prime Minister Maurice Duplessis, but the actual, when they started doing this to the orphans, this transition where they were relabeling them as mentally retarded and psychotic with the Roman Catholic Church and the government, this actually began around 1938, around the same time as the Holocaust, did it not?
Well, yeah, he was, Duplessis was the premier from 36 to 39, and from 44 to 59. But yeah, this scheme, it was a scheme between the government of Canada, the Catholic Church, and the Quebec government under Maurice Duplessis. Yeah, and they schemed. There was monies to be made. There was, keeping a child in an orphanage at 75 cents a day, and a child in a psychiatric hospital, they could get $2.25. So,
wow.
So they all schemed together. They colluded together, and and so they start transferring, emptying all the orphanages, and start filling up the psychiatric hospitals.
Rod, I have a question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I have a question. What was it in our history between 1938 and 1945 that the human race lost any trace of humanity? That we've heard about Nazi Germany and over 5 million Jews killed there, and Stalin in Russia. But when you think about Canada and the United States, and you talk about the Canadian Holocaust, I mean, you would never believe that anything like this would happen in a free society. And I mean, that's what's chilling to me, is how this started and how were these orphans chosen for this?
Never, I would have never thought of, imagine how big, how, immense this case was. At the beginning, we're just talking about, orphans, they were transferred here and there. But like in 1992, there was a police inquiry, and I saw I saw this case going, from it was going good and then it started going bad because I saw people, there was collusion between the government and the church, and I noticed that they didn't want to get justice for these children. So, I could have fought just for my wife's case, but I decided, I don't know, my inner side was saying, to do something or try to do something to get justice for these people here, because they couldn't talk for themselves, being many years locked up without education, without nothing, and being tortured, and thousands were murdered. There's 100,000 orphans that's direct into this case here, and there's 100,000 orphans that are disappeared or murdered, and there's mass grave sites and the whole works. But like you were saying, talking about Nazi Germany, and it's just mind-boggling that that you could say, well, this happened in Canada and to children, and I'm just going to give you an example. Which I call Canada and Quebec's concentration camps and extermination camps of 100,000. I'm just going to give you an example of one hospital here, Saint Psychiatric Hospital in Montreal. Now, they've been trying to cover up all this piece of land that they had. Now, this land here, okay, there's what is called the Pigsty Cemetery, but this place here had their own, this was a sovereign state inside of Montreal, sovereign state called Ville-Gamelin. It had two judges on the administration board, Jacques Trahan and Guy Maril Desaulniers. And they had railroad tracks linked to the main line. They also had a wharf. Now, these nuns here, the Sisters of Providence, owned a fleet of ships. They had their own armed police force on this hospital, on the hospital land. So the Montreal provincial, the Montreal police and the provincial police had no jurisdiction on this territory. So any deaths, it was all inquiry was with the police, their own police. So, no markers, no death certificates. We don't know what happened, to the kids,
Now, Rod, how many years did these crimes actually run from?
1935 to 75.
40 years of torture.
Yes. Yeah. And
oh my God.
Oh my God. And then, after I got into this case here and really researching and talking with the orphans, different orphans, well, like one orphan, Silvio Day, he's still alive, he's in Montreal. Now, his job in the hospital, in that hospital I just mentioned, now he had to go to different, cells, the operating room, and wait outside, and he would pick up dead orphans, the bodies, and bring them down to the morgue that was in the cellar, and had to wash orphans, and then bring them to the other part, to the freezers. Now, he transported about 75 orphans until he fell sick.
I can only imagine. Yeah, sick as I can only imagine what he was going through. Not to mention what the orphans themselves are going through, but actually having to cart those bodies away.
Well, Rod, the one question is was this totally indiscriminate? When you have Hitler and you had Stalin, you had a scapegoat group, whether it was the Jews or Moors or whatever. What